sweet like a buttercup. You're a Barbie doll. Show them all what I'm made of. Strut down the hall. Won't stop till I get enough.
All right, jumping right in. Today, it's the AAP Rocky verdict, a case that, well, everyone's been talking about.
Yeah, definitely got people's attention.
We've got these excerpts from People magazine. They go into the trial, and honestly, this doesn't feel like your typical celebrity trial, you know?
Oh, you're so right. This one, it kind of makes you think about bigger things, like what does justice even mean? How much do people's opinions matter? And evidence, how much weight does that actually have?
It's kind of deep. So, okay, we've got this famous rapper, AAP Rocky. He was accused of shooting at his former friend, A.A.P. Pirelli. Back in 2021, this all happened.
And these weren't like, small charges. We're talking 2 felony counts. Assault with a firearm, serious stuff.
Right, like serious jail time.
Absolutely, up to 24 years, to be exact.
Wow. So not messing around, but it gets even more complicated, right? Because you've got these 2 totally different stories from Rocky and Relly. Seems like the whole case was about who the jury decided to believe.
Exactly. Relly, he said he was hanging out with Rocky and some other AAP mob guys. An argument happened, things escalated, and bam, Rocky shot at him.
Intense.
Yeah. And he even said he had, minor injuries from bullet fragments, he claimed.
But then Rocky's defense team, they came back with a completely different story. They said, wait, it was a prop gun. Just for protection, nothing more.
Right, and that Relly was making the whole thing up, hoping to get a big payout.
It's kind of wild how different their stories are.
It is, and here's the thing. Neither side had a ton of physical evidence to back them up. The gun, never found. And the shell casings they did find. No fingerprints. So how do you decide who's guilty when it's basically one person's word against another's? And there's barely any proof. It makes you think.
Yeah, it's easy to see it as like a typical celebrity he said kind of thing. But looking at what you've provided, it seems like it goes deeper than that. Like, how do you prove what someone was thinking when you don't have much physical evidence? What do you think about that?
That's a great point. It all comes down to beyond a reasonable doubt, right? That's the standard for a guilty verdict. But think about it. What does that even mean in a real-world situation?
Yeah, it's kind of vague.
It is. It basically means the jury needs to be almost 100% sure the person's guilty, based only on what they see in court. And when you have a case like this one, hardly any physical evidence, just people saying opposite things. Getting to that level of certainty is super hard.
Totally. And then you throw on the whole celebrity thing. Public perception, it's everywhere. Rihanna, she was in the courtroom constantly supporting Rocky.
Oh yeah, the prosecution, they had a tough job. They kept trying to bring the focus back to the facts, like, hey, Rihanna's famous, but that shouldn't matter to you guys, the jury. But honestly, how do you separate celebrity from a case like this, especially it's all over the media? It's almost impossible.
Yeah, it's like this perfect storm, right? You've got this friendship that's broken down, the legal stuff, trying to prove what someone meant to do, and then all the celebrity stuff, it distorts everything. Makes me wonder, even without the fame, how often do those same things influence how we judge situations in our own lives?
Oh, absolutely. We all have biases, right? Things we think without even realizing it. This case shows how powerful those outside factors can be, even in something as serious as a trial.
So let's get into the details, the evidence they actually presented. We know there was that surveillance footage, right, of the argument, but it didn't actually show the shooting.
Right. And the defense, they kept bringing that up. Like, see, you can't even see it happen. And they also kept pointing out inconsistencies in Riley's story, trying to make it seem like, well, maybe he's just doing this for the money.
Trying to create doubt, basically.
Yeah, exactly. So now the jury, they have all this conflicting information. How do they even begin to weigh it all?
Yeah, it's a huge responsibility.
Huge. They have to decide, okay, who do we believe? Who's being honest? Does what they're saying match up with the evidence? It's like a puzzle with missing pieces. They have to make the best guess they can.
And to make it even more complicated, there's the whole question of how the law sees physical evidence versus like someone saying, I saw this happen. Are those treated equally in court?
That's a really important point. So generally, physical evidence is seen as more objective, more reliable than someone saying, I saw this. Because memories, they can be tricky. Stress, bias, it can all affect what we remember.
Makes sense.
But that doesn't mean what witnesses say is useless. In a lot of cases, like this one, it's super important for understanding the story, the background, the whole context.
So the jury has this balancing act, right? Trying to weigh the hard evidence against what people are saying, even though it might be subjective.
Exactly. And that's where things get really interesting. Because even in a case that seems simple on the surface, there's often a lot of room for interpretation. Different ways of seeing things, and that can lead to different conclusions.
Makes you think about how complicated our justice system is, doesn't it? All these pieces. And in the end, it comes down to what a group of people decide, how they see the evidence, what they think of the testimony.
It's a lot to handle. And yeah, this case really shows how it all works, or sometimes how it doesn't work. The whole system.
Right. And after weeks of all this, the testimony, the discussions, the jury finally decided not guilty on both charges.
Yeah, big moment in the courtroom. Rocky, you could see the relief on his face. He was thanking the jury. It was emotional, for sure.
I bet. But it makes me wonder, does not guilty always mean like you're actually innocent in everyone's eyes? Or is there always this little bit of doubt that sticks around?
That's such a good point. Even if the law says you're okay, the public, they might think differently. And that can be hard to shake.
Especially nowadays, everything's online. It's hard to escape anything.
It is. Even if you're proven innocent, sometimes those accusations just stay with you. This case, it makes you think about the long-term effects on Rocky, on Relly, no matter what the verdict was.
Yeah, I'm thinking about Relly especially. He lost his friend, obviously. But then there's also all this public scrutiny, people saying he's lying for money. That's got to be tough.
It is. Even if it's not true, his reputation, it's taken a hit. And it makes you think, these high-profile cases, the people involved, it's like their whole lives are on display. And the consequences, they could be huge. They last for years.
And the media, they play a big role, right? Shaping how the public sees things, all the coverage, the headlines, social media, it's constant.
Absolutely. They set the narrative, and we got to be aware of that. How that narrative can affect us, our opinions. We have to be like critical thinkers when it comes to this stuff, especially in these big attention-grabbing cases.
Like we were saying before, that he said, she said thing, even without the whole celebrity angle, how do we in our everyday lives deal with these situations where people have completely different stories? What can we learn from a case like this?
Such a good question. This case, no clear physical evidence, just conflicting stories. It really shows how important critical thinking is. Not just accepting things at face value, but stopping and asking, wait, what are the other sides to this? Am I letting my own biases get in the way?
So what can we do to be more, careful? How can we avoid jumping to conclusions when we hear different versions of the same story?
One thing is to, recognize that we have biases. We all do. And they can affect how we see things without us even knowing it. So just admitting that, hey, I come into this with my own opinions, that's a good starting point.
Makes sense. And what about the sources of information? How can we tell if what we're reading or hearing is actually true?
Right, look at the source, their reputation. Have they been reliable in the past? Do they have any biases we should know about that can help us figure out if we can trust them? And comparing, getting information from different places, that helps too, getting a broader view.
So it's not just about passively taking in information. It's about being active, questioning things, really thinking about what we're seeing and hearing.
Exactly. And being okay with not always having a clear answer. Sometimes there isn't a right or wrong, things are complicated, and that's fine.
This deep dive, it's really made me think about how important it is to be informed, to think critically. Especially now, we're always getting bombarded with news and opinions from everywhere.
I agree. It's more important than ever to develop those skills, to be aware of our biases. And this case, it's a great example of why.
So the trial's over, but the conversation isn't. This case brings up bigger questions about truth, how we see the world, dealing with conflicting information. These things matter, even outside of a courtroom.
Yeah, it's like this whole case, it's showing us how hard it is to understand anything, really. Like, everyone's got their own version of what happened, and it's hard to us to figure out, what's real.
That's a really good point. Makes me think about doubt. In the trial, the defense, that's what they were doing, right? Trying to make a jury doubt everything.
Yeah.
But is doubt always a bad thing? I'm not so sure.
Interesting. Usually we're told to be confident, to know what we believe, right? Right. But maybe just a little bit of doubt, it can be helpful. When we're trying to figure things out,
Okay, I see what you're saying.
It can push us to look closer, to question things, to consider, well, maybe there's another way to see this. It stops us from just believing everything we hear, and it makes us want to learn more to find out the truth.
So it's not about being afraid to doubt. It's about using doubt to, help us think better, to understand things in a more, a deeper way.
Exactly. Because let's be real, we can't always be 100% sure about anything, especially when it comes to people and why they do things. Accepting that, being okay with a little uncertainty, it helps us be more open-minded, see things from different angles.
This whole deep dive into the AOP Rocky case, it's been fascinating. We went way beyond just the headlines, We got into the legal stuff, but also, like you said, these bigger ideas about truth, perception, how to think critically.
It's been great talking about all this with you. I hope everyone listening learned something, not just about this case, but about how to approach information, how to be more aware of what we're taking in.
Absolutely. Before we go, any final thoughts for our listeners, something they can take with them, use in their own lives as they're trying to make sense of the world?
The biggest thing is to just keep asking questions. Don't just take things at face value, whatever you're told or you read. Question it, challenge it, see if there's another side of the story. And be open to doubt, like we were talking about. Those are the things that'll help you understand the world better and come to your own conclusions.
Great advice. And that's what the deep dive is all about, right? So everyone listening, keep those questions coming, stay curious, and keep exploring. Until next time.
Sound the alarm. I'm coming up. We'll have a ball. I'm sweet like a buttercup. You're Barbie doll. Show them all what I'm made of.